Hey, welcome back to episode 2 of the Motorcyclist podcast, where we talk about motorcycles and what makes them great. As we say, topics on the show are going to constantly change, but the one thing that's going to stay the same is two-wheeled fun. In this episode, we're going to talk about this year's MotoGP finale and about all the concept bikes that we saw at EICMA this year. That includes bikes like BMW's concept R1300 GS, Honda's supercharged V3 engine, and some electric bikes that are really making a splash for this year's show. As always, EICMA is the big show where everyone brings all their stuff, shows off what they're working on, shows their new bikes, and really shows off what they have in store for the future. And that includes a lot of concepts. This year, there was a lot more electric concepts, which has become more and more every single year at EICMA, obviously. And in some of the last few concepts, including engines, they're saying that they're going to build these crazy engines. So that's going to be really cool. So we're going to get going. But before we do that, we need to have some introductions. We've got editor Adam Waheed. We've got in-market editor Bradley Adams. And you got myself, executive editor Justin Dawes. So as always, we're going to start with what everyone's riding. So Adam, what did you ride this week?
Oh, we were lucky enough to try out Honda's 2025 CBR 1000 Triple R Fireblade SP yesterday. And wow, what a nice bike. It's cool to see Honda back in the superbike game finally after kind of being away for a few years.
Right on. Bradley, what about you?
I was actually lucky enough to ride that with Adam. And I will just add that, yes, he's right. That thing was a lot of fun. But I actually wanted to take this chance to talk about the Husky Vitplin 401 that we've had at the office for a little bit. I haven't ridden it. We've been riding the Duke 390, and that bike, it just didn't fit me. It was so compact, and I just didn't really gel with it that much. It kind of, you can see the bones are there for a good bike. And then all of a sudden I jumped on the Vitplin, and I was like, this is where it makes sense. Great little like city bike. You know, obviously it's a little bit buzzy and not great for freeway riding and stuff like that. So for the longer commutes, maybe not so great, but it's like a little around town entry level machine. That thing is a lot of fun, and it looks really good. I think it looks better than the Duke as well.
Nice.
So
yeah,
it was cool to throw a leg over that.
Nice. Right on.
You've been playing in the mud too, right? This week I saw a couple posts.
This week was no testing for work. It was all behind the computer all week, except for Sunday. I went out and rode with the boys in the mud. And man, it was muddy. It was a lot of mud. Yeah, I think we went maybe 5 miles in 4 or 5 hours.
Whoa, that's brutal.
Yeah, lots of hill climbs, just like greased ice everywhere we went. So that was on my KTM 350 behind me. But yeah, super fun weekend to just go out and ride without thinking about work.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
My weekend consisted of watching a lot of MotoGP.
Yeah.
Big fan of season finales. I mean, obviously we kind of knew going into this weekend that Jorge Martin was most likely going to walk away with the championship, and he rode smart, and it kind of made for relatively boring racing, I guess you could say.
It was yeah, it was not the most exciting of races, but I mean, the whole season, it was up in the air the whole time. And that's what you want to see out of a season, is that it's not a foregone conclusion who's going to win until the very last race. So, I mean, it could have been one of Jorge's moves that he's done multiple times where he just throws it away, you know,
Yeah,
and it could have
definitely possible
changed.
for sure. Yeah, it's like you're hanging in, just like, okay, let's see this thing through the end. But I don't know. I love last race of the season. I think there's so much emotion to it. You get people retiring. In this case, you had Aleix Espargaro, and just what he's done and contributed to the paddock, I think, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve. So, I mean, it was really cool to see him get to celebrate, and he had a fantastic race, I thought.
Yeah, 4th place for his last race. Very
fifth,
good
right?
race. Fifth. But
yeah,
he was up there in 4th.
Yeah,
second,
no, he was up front. That was really cool to see.
It was.
How about the venue change?
Yeah. I mean,
they pulled it off. I think they did a good job.
And it was really cool to see, all the outpouring of emotion for Valencia and guys running, grabbing the Valencia flag when they were doing their cool down laps and all that. Like, it was good to see that, although they moved the venue, they didn't forget where the race was supposed to be and the people
That's a good point.
of that area. So that was really cool.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I just love racing. I love watching that stuff. I love the emotion that series can just bring you, and just watching, and just everything that those teams put into being out there, and just getting through a whole season, and the successes that people have. It's, I don't know. I think it's really cool to kind of put a bow on the season, and I don't know. I thought it was really, really good weekend.
Yeah, and I mean they're already back at it today, right? First season test is today. You've got Marc Marquez on the factory Ducati.
All red. That was cool. That was like a statement. I didn't get it at first, and I was like, oh, he's making a statement like, I'm in red this year.
I'm all red. My bike is red this year. My bike is red. It is not Grazzini colors. It is not a satellite ride. I am back to factory racing, which is really cool. But I'm going to wonder how those guys are going to work together. Pecco and Marquez. Pecco is quite the competitor. He's a talented rider, but he races clean. He doesn't.
What are you saying about Mark?
Put himself
what are you
first.
trying to say here?
Where Marquez is. I could see him shoving his teammate around a little bit.
Yeah, I think they've done an incredible job with that relationship so far. I was in Mugello last year, and I'm not sure if you guys remember, but there was an incident in, I think it was either qualifying or one of the last free practice, and going in, I think it was like into turn 1 or something, and I remember I was actually walking down Hot Pit past the Ducati garage just after that, and it was with the Alpinestars guys, so they were communicating and they were talking about how frustrated, and that's it's a very nice term to use, but how frustrated they were with Marquez in that. And so I think what they've been able to do with that relationship, not only between Ducati and Marc, but now with Pecco and Marc, I think is been good. Now, when does that sour at any point this year? Because to your point, that's it only takes one incident,
It only takes one. It only takes one.
Probably gonna be more than one.
Yeah, good point. So along those lines, a couple of other things. Obviously, you've got a bunch of you got Maverick and Enea on the KTMs. That's been interesting, watching Jorge on the Aprilia. I've been watching some of the test results so far today, and I think the funniest thing to me, well, actually there's a couple things that stood out, but one, Jorge had a small crash on the Aprilia, and then Enea had a crash on the KTM. And it was just guys who are getting off the Ducatis and getting on other bikes. I'm assuming that they're trying to do similar things that they've done on the Ducatis, and they're like, oh wait, no, this isn't a Ducati.
This isn't Ducati.
But, it's kind of biting him a little,
right? But man, Vinales on the KTM. Was
he pretty quick? Yeah, I didn't see the final results.
Fourth fastest before we clicked off to record this thing. So he's going fast, and he hasn't fallen down yet. But he's going from an Aprilia to a KTM, not a Ducati to a KTM.
Right.
So, and then you've got the one guy, obviously, that everyone's talking about, Jorge Martin, new champion, taking his number 1 plate to Aprilia, which, man, that's a big, we'll say, FU to Ducati.
Yeah, that was a hot topic. I know there was a quote this weekend from the Ducati guys about essentially insinuating that Aprilia was buying a number 1 plate, which I don't necessarily see that being the case. But
no, they gave away the number 1 plate. They should have taken care of Jorge.
That's the way to put it. Yeah. A couple other things. Got a new MotoGP logo. Super small thing, but worth mentioning because we know everyone's going to want to talk about that. It wasn't very well received. It was a little bit, what do they call it? Minimalist styling?
Minimalist.
Did you see it, Adam? Did you check it out? What you thought?
Yeah, I did.
You're the creative
saw
guy.
it. I don't know. I don't think a update and logo really is a big meaning to me. The old logo is fine. I remember Supercross did that a couple years ago, and it's just a non-factor to me. So cool they did it, but it doesn't even matter.
It's not like their logo was like a Coca-Cola logo or a Ford logo that has been the same logo forever. So if they're constantly updating for the times, even Formula One, the logo changes. So it doesn't matter.
I think people's thing is just trying to see, this is really the first look at Liberty Media's impact, right, on the series. And so I think they're kind of using this as an example of what they're going to do for,
Yeah.
whether it's, good changes or bad. And I think people so far aren't happy with the logo, but
Yeah.
in a year, nobody's going to remember it. And
I will
hopefully we
say
get some good racing.
the one thing that I'm bummed about is losing Simon Crafar from the announcing team to go to Chief Steward, which is going to be great for the riders. Spencer was always kind of got a lot of crap for inconsistent decisions. And I think Simon's
Tough job.
Very tough job. But I think Simon's going to should be very consistent and very fair. He knows the riders just as Spencer did, obviously, but he's a little less removed by his years of racing. So, but I always liked his commentary, and I always looked forward to Simon's insights. So I'm bummed to lose that part of the team.
It was like a cheat code getting to listen to him, right? Because he just so much knowledge, and he did such a good job of explaining stuff. Last thing we got to talk about. Sorry, Adam, about MotoGP weekend. There were Harleys on track. Kyle Wyman, a couple other guys riding their factory prep road glides at Catalunya. That was interesting. What do you know about that? You know anything?
I know that Simon Crafar wrote it, and that was cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of Simon Crafar,
wrote it. Yeah, he wrote it. So it was all Harleys. There was no Indians there. So there's not a lot of info on what really is going to happen with that. Are they going to have like a fully fledged racing season that's just a Harley exhibition, or are they going to open it up to everybody else and make it a bagger class at MotoGP, or is there something else that's going to come of it? Nobody really knows. So
yeah, I think we were promised a press release at some point this week on some intentions and things like that. And I know it seems like people are really torn on their opinions on it. I mean, I think obviously there's some silliness to it, the whole thing, but at the same time, like I think, Adam, we went to a Moto America race this last year, and you see the crowds that those baggers are drawing in. I mean,
the Cruiser V twin people love it.
It's incredible. So
I love it. I'm not a Cruiser
V
twin guy. I'm not. I like riding cruisers. Bradley's a super cruiser guy now, but I love the racing because it's weird. It's hectic. Things are weaving and bobbing all over the place. Like, it's super fun to watch, and it really did invigorate part of Moto America, and that's rad. But does MotoGP need that? Maybe not.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, will be interesting to see kind of what comes of all that. I'd love to hear some people's thoughts on it too. So drop a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on the whole bagger racing thing and seeing those guys at Catalunya. It's interesting nonetheless, and I think guys like Kyle Wyman have been such a great steward for that series. And yeah, I'm happy to see those guys push the project forward. We love seeing progress and growth, and people who are committed to motorcycling and the sport and growing it, and that's in a lot of ways what they're doing. So no arguments there.
Absolutely. Talking about prototype MotoGP, why don't we talk about the concept motorcycles that were at EICMA here a couple weeks ago in Milan, Italy. A lot of cool concepts from BMW Motorrad and Honda, and a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of cool bikes. We can't talk about all of them because this show would be 3.5, 4 hours long. But kind of the standouts that we saw, on our websites really popping off in terms of comments and views. The first one was BMW's concept F450 GS. That thing looks really fun.
Yeah, it's funny to see so much discussion and interest in what is essentially still a small displacement adventure bike, but it's a proper adventure bike, I think, is the big takeaway from that, right? Obviously not a lot of specs, as will be the case with a lot of these concept bikes, but all new parallel twin engine, 48 horsepower, new chassis. It looks like it's got like the BMW's upgraded electronics package, at least showing that they're taking it serious. And all the stuff I read was basically insinuating, hey, we wanted to build a proper off-road machine that also still worked on road and was enjoyable to ride in that situation. But for sure, it always went back to aggressive off-road stuff, and you saw that in the video clips that they pushed out on it. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's an exciting space. I mean, I think one thing about the adventure bike category right now is so many people that have got into it and are into the large displacement stuff, they've kind of already got their bikes and are happy. I think what we're seeing is trying to fill that bottom tier again and get new riders into this space. We're seeing that obviously with the KTM 390 that we talked about last week. Looking at this bike, I think they're trying to get new riders into that ADV space and then help bring them through the lineups. And I think this thing looks cool. I think it looks really cool, actually.
It looks
I've never
cool.
ridden the G310, but this looks like a proper upgrade.
Well, I don't think it's an upgrade. It's just splitting the difference between the G310 GS product and then the F850 900 product, I believe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll be curious. What do you guys thoughts? Do you think this is going to be like a replacement for it, or
No.
for the G310? Or
I think the G310 will stay. I mean, that's like a 30-something horsepower bike. This is almost 50. This may be filling in the space that was originally had the 650s or Taos and things like that in there. You know what I mean? This is maybe taking that space. And what I really like about it, though, is it looks like a big GS. Like it has the same styling as the 1300. Now the 900 looks actually out of place. Like it's like you're like, where's the beak on the 900 that you see on the other two bikes? I really like the way the 900 looks, but now it seems out of place. So. But I'm excited to ride the thing. I would say that maybe showing how hardcore that they're going with the videos and all that stuff. I really wish it would have had a 21-inch front wheel on.
Yeah.
But they love their 1917 combo.
They do love their 1917 combo for sure. So maybe it's splitting the difference. And, you know, I mean, GSs are always capable off-road, even with the 17 and 19. So that's just me and my hardcore dirt nerd wanting something even more hardcore, right?
What about KTM? That they did more KTM things of like having bikes there, not really talking about it, but then like, so I'm talking about new 990 RCR, new KTM sport bike, had it on display at EICMA, even sent us some videos with like walkarounds and stuff, and we're like, oh, we're not going to talk about this bike. But then you go on their website and they've got a full model page with like horsepower numbers and some, you know, at least some discussion on some specs, at least, you know, looking at the suspension that they're going to have on. Obviously, it's going to be the WP stuff, but it's like so hard to understand where they're at. I mean, they say this bike is coming next year. And I mean, obviously, you saw it on display. It looked like it's ready to roll. But then they're like, no, we're not going to tell you anything about it just yet. Where are we at?
Yeah. My take on it is it's already done. It's ready. It's ready to go to production. That's what KTM Group, Peter Mobility Group usually does, is their concepts most of the time are almost fully finished machines. And they're just like, it's a concept, but they're just kind of stringing you along until they can start production on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it's pretty much there. It's ready to go. I think if this project would have been started a year later, we wouldn't ever see this bike, considering the recent news of some financial, I would say, difficulties with KTM.
Yeah.
You know, they're
a lot of doom and gloom out there for those folks.
Yeah, definitely. You know, they're looking for an injection. They said in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So, which will probably come from Bajaj, would be my guess, but who knows? But I think, you know, they were very much against building a sport bike for quite a while, and then now they're doing it, and we're lucky that they did it before the current financial doom and gloom, because I think this bike would not have made it if it had been started later. So yeah, I'm excited to see it.
I think it'll be. I mean, I've always enjoyed KTM sport bikes from the past, so yeah, I'm optimistic. So the things we do know about this bike, they're saying about 128 horsepower, I think 76 pound-feet of torque, right in that range. So, and they're very clear. They say this is built for what we're all calling now next gen super sport, kind of the modern era of super sports. You know, mid displacement, maybe a little bit street oriented. I think this one will be a lot less street oriented than new Panigale, new R9, things like that. I think it's KTM, so it's going to be pretty aggro.
Yeah, it's not going to be as aggro as the RC8C, obviously, which is like just a full on race bike, limited numbers. But I think it's going to be the return of a KTM sport bike that should be pretty rad, even if it is 128 horsepower and 76 foot-pounds of torque. It's going to be light. It's going to have aero. I think it's going to be pretty aggressive still.
Yeah, I think like we talked about with Ducati, what Ducati does so well right now especially is taking everything they're learning in racing and applying it to the production bikes. I think KTM's doing a really good job of that too. And I think you see that a lot in this bike. Maybe not as much as, a Panigale V4 or something like that, but especially in terms of aerodynamics. I know that was the one thing they have talked a lot about is aerodynamics. Obviously, you see what they're doing in GP. They've been, pushing the boundaries in aero there, and they're applying that to these bikes. So I like that. I think that's what sport bikes are all about, right? It's about they go racing to develop these technologies and apply it to the production bikes. And I think the end consumer, we benefit from that. So
yeah, that's always been KTM's jam. Learning from racing, putting it into what they're currently doing, along with some innovation mechanically, usually. So
yeah.
But speaking of mechanical innovation, dude, let's talk about Honda's V3 engine that they debuted at EICMA. So they say it's a concept. It's a V3, so it's got two cylinders in the front, one on the back, and it is electrically supercharged. So it's a round blower type setup. It's not like a Roots type of setup. It's a centrifugal supercharger that's powered electrically, which should make some radness in terms of being able to produce power wherever they want, because they don't have to wait for the engine to spin up to power a supercharger or power a turbocharger. Like, they can just have the airbox boosted before the throttle's even cracked, which is, they could have massive low end power with something like that.
Even just the V3 setup as in general is pretty cool to see. I mean, super unique. Obviously, you're going to have the benefits of it being a little bit narrower. We just really haven't seen anything on a production side, especially in the 4-stroke world. I mean, obviously, a lot of old GP bikes, or you had a lot of 2-stroke race bikes where you had setup, but yeah, we just haven't seen it. So it'd be interesting to see how they apply it to a production bike. Which, I think you mentioned, or at least I've heard that they do plan on putting this in a production bike at some point, right?
Yeah, that's what they said. I'll read a quote, but I want to ask Adam what he thinks this engine will end up in first.
Well, I sure hope it's in a Honda Goldwing. That would be really awesome. 2028 Honda Goldwing.
A mini wing.
I guess the 6-cylinder purists would probably be upset, but I think a forced induction V3 would be cool and economical.
Yeah.
So I'd say the Goldwing, that would be awesome.
Okay. I would say some sort of light sport bike is going to be my guess. Some sort of sport tour. What about you, Bradley?
I mean, it's got to be a naked bike, in my opinion. I would think you got to show that thing. I think when you have an engine like that's so unique, you want to show it off, and there's no better place to show off an engine than in a naked bike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So that gets to the point of this electrically supercharged, is that it's going to be a pretty versatile engine, and we all think it's going to be good in something different, which means that they should put it, they're probably going to put it in a lot of stuff. So Honda says, I'm going to quote it, so I'm going to read it here. The potential of this new direction is obvious. With breathtaking possibilities in terms of models to come, development will continue towards mass production and towards Honda's goal of enabling customers to further experience the unique joy of riding and owning a motorcycle. Pretty much they're saying, we're going to build it, and we're going to put it in something, and we're going to keep working on this thing. So that's going to be, I think, something really cool for Honda. We haven't seen really anything supercharged since the H2. And before that, it was years and years and years, going back to, the 80s with some turbocharged bikes. So I'm pumped to see it. Definitely.
That ain't the only thing they got, right?
Yeah, how about those electric naked bikes that look awful production ready? The other manufacturers are pumping out electric street bikes, and it looks like, Honda's about ready to start here, probably momentarily.
Yep. And I think we keep saying, the, EVs are cool and they do their thing and they work in their place.
Do we say EVs are cool?
I think they're cool.
You
I
think
think
they're
they're
cool?
cool.
Okay.
I think they're cool for urban environments and for short stints and all that stuff. Obviously, they have their limitations with battery density and charging times and all that stuff. But if Honda's getting into it now, they usually don't jump into anything willy nilly on a whim, on a gamble. They don't gamble. Honda does not gamble, which means they see this market as being profitable and there's a future to it. And so now they're coming out with their some big motorcycles. And the first one is called the EV Fun. It's got freaking 17-inch wheels with real looking rubber on it, like
proper suspension and wheels.
Proper
for
suspension,
sure. Yeah, it's a big bike. It's not this like commuter bike like we've been seeing, which has been a little bit of the trend. No, this looks like a full, like maybe 750 kind of compatible size.
Yeah, electric Hornet basically.
Yeah,
the way I'm seeing it. It's still, they're saying, cruising range is like 62 miles, 100 kilometers. Still bump, right? But there are people that want something to run around town, but don't want a skinny, tired mini bike, not feeling like a big motorcycle. And this feels like a big motorcycle. Just
that's
like,
the
Livewire. It's a full-size motorcycle, and there's people that want that. And for those people that want that, this thing's going to be cool.
It's actually funny you say that, because I will say that was one of the weird things about last year riding the Kawasaki Ninja E1 and ZE1, where it had this like full-on sport bike look and feel to them, but they were really small and just like they were this like weird middle ground that you couldn't like really wrap your head around. You gear up completely, right? Jacket, helmet, gloves, all this stuff, and you get on this like little bike that feels like a little play bike. And you're just like riding around, and is a really weird thing to wrap your head around. Where I could see what you're saying, and I should say I do like this trend of city bikes. I'll talk about some of the other stuff that I've ridden recently that are really cool concepts for EVs. But this, going back to now like a full size motorcycle, I do like that. I'm struggling with the range. I mean, obviously it'll change, and I think we only have some numbers mentioned in a release or something. But like, what'd you say? I think it's like 62 miles.
62 miles. Yeah, it's not a lot. So
BRP style.
Yeah, like the Can-Am BRP, same thing, right? 62 miles. And so I think product planners at this point in some of the big companies are looking at all these young kids riding Surons and Super 73s and all that stuff. Like, like especially where you guys are at in Southern California, Irvine, you're seeing like throngs, just tons of kids riding those things to school. And eventually they're going to go, I want a bigger motorcycle. I want something bigger. Now I'm 18. What can I get? And so they're going to have these people that have grown up on electrics. And so they may not want to step into something that takes gasoline. They're used to the plug-in. They're used to charging and all that stuff. This is the development of catching those customers and bringing them into the motorcycling world.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think Adam made a good point the last time we talked about, so much of the development of product nowadays is in reference to the digital era we're living in, and people constantly on their phones, right? And used to their cell phones. And we charge those, we charge all these things, right? And same thing now that you're talking about this next generation of rider who they've grown up charging their bikes overnight or something, right? And I think it will be a natural evolution for them, much more so than it is for guys like us, for sure. The last thing I will say about that is I do think that bike looks really good. I think they did a really good job. It's always interesting to see when manufacturers jump in and what they do with the design and stuff, but that's a really clean design. I hope that kind of makes its way into the production model.
It is clean for sure. That does a clean looking bike,
Yep. Still, though, is the Flying Flea C6. So Flying Flea is it's by Royal Enfield.
This one's gonna need an explanation. What is Flying Flea? Let's break this down.
So Flying Flea is the electric brand of Royal Enfield. Flying Flea originally was a motorcycle that was dropped out of airplanes during World War II to soldiers. So
via parachute, right?
Via parachute. So that's where the name Flying Flea came from. Now they've applied it to electric motorcycles. So they've dropped this concept, which looks super, super finished and done also. You know, that's also a kind of an urban ride, but it's very retro and almost vintage looking. I mean, I like the shape. Adam, what's your take?
I mean, it's very retro, almost Vespa-like kind of. Like I look at it and I see old Vespa lines with the curves and stuff, but I think it's neat, you know?
Yeah, it was funny. I was looking earlier today at like a head-on shot of that bike and how narrow it is. I thought that was interesting. It reminded me of the Maving RM1S, which I also got to ride this year. I really like that. I like that one especially because you had the swappable batteries on it. I'm still a big fan of swappable batteries. This one, I believe, is not coming with a swappable setup.
No swappable battery on this one. And they did like some market research where they talked like 5,000 people, which is a lot of people for a focus group. And, you know, they said, okay, you can have swappable batteries for this price, or you can have it cheaper and have a non-swappable. And when they were given the choice, like when they first asked them, they said, do you want swappable batteries? Everyone goes, absolutely. Yes, we want swappable batteries. Okay, well, it's going to be $1,000 more than non-swappable. I'll take the non-swappable. You know, it is what it is.
Someone made a good point too about, and I hadn't really thought about this, but theft concerns with the swappable stuff, which I guess is, obviously it's a potential issue. You need to try make sure you're securing them in the bike, right? So that if they're the left, it's not a door that can easily be, opened up and those batteries stolen. It's a legitimate concern for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in urban environments, right? Where you're going to be locking your bike up and you're going to be putting it somewhere and you're going to be leaving it all day. Like, I think it's actually become a problem in some like Taiwan and stuff. I think they have a huge electric scooter usage there and batteries are getting stolen all the time.
Interesting.
So I think that's...
I didn't know that.
That's some research for them to do that. So there's going to be a scrambler version of this as well called the S6 instead of the C6. So probably C means classic, S means scrambler. Maybe that, they're going to keep expanding this line, obviously. There's no words on spec. We don't know what the range is. We don't know the battery capacity. We don't know the voltage. We don't know really anything about the bike besides it looks cool. It's got this rad, girder fork on it. It's very narrow. It's very stylish. That's about all we know. But Mari Alvisi from Royal Enfield, he said, quote, "It'll be perfect to ride from Santa Monica to Ventura and back." So doing the math on that, that's like 60 miles each way. So maybe 120 mile range, or maybe you ride it to Santa Monica at 60 miles, you charge it, and then you ride 60 miles back. Who knows what he means by that, but
it gives you an idea of kind of the range that they're looking at, which it's definitely, again, this is the trend right now that I'm seeing is a big focus on commuter bikes, which I do think is smart, until battery technology catches up and you can balance weight and things like that. I think these lighter weight commuter bikes that just get you to and from work or something like that across the city, I think that is smart. It's a smart area to focus on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we keep saying, oh, when battery density catches up, it may never catch up, and this may be the way that electrics are, is they're commuter machines, and that's fine. And I think we need to separate our expectations of an electric motorcycle compared to an ICE motorcycle. I think they're two different things at this point, and they may always be two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Except for in the world of arena cross.
Yeah.
You guys see that? We got ICE versus electrics in arena cross.
Yeah,
now.
We do. Yeah, Starks are in there mixing it up, which is pretty cool.
Which is
really
a good
cool
transition to CFMoto concept that was shown at EICMA. And was it the CFX? That's what it is. It's called the CFX. Again, don't know a ton about it, except for like most of the CFMoto stuff right now. It looks really cool. I love their colorways. I love their design language on all the bikes that they're doing. Like CFMoto is just like, oh, the gas. I'm a big fan of what they're doing right now in terms of their lineup. But yeah, in this case, that CFX looks cool. I'll probably hand this one over to you, Justin, because you're more the dirt guy. But what are your thoughts on it?
I think it looks really awesome. It looks a bit wider than the Stark down at the bottom. But other than that, I'm good with it. So I think it looks rad, and it's got a 400 volt electrical system. So that's very similar to the Stark Varg. Stark Varg is 420 volt. So, and that bike makes 80 horsepower, but we don't know what the amperage is and the battery capacity. So that we have one piece of like what I call the triangle on electric now, which is you got to know the voltage, the amperage, that gives you the watts, and you can figure out power and how much horsepower and all that stuff. So, but WP suspension, obviously with their ties with Peer Mobility Group, I think it looks cool. Heed, what do you think?
I think it's a really neat looking bike. It's cool to see, these manufacturers, just putting their touch on these different types of vehicles and just really making them their own. I think it's neat.
Have you guys seen? I was kind of joking about it earlier, but I do actually think that this the electric classes that they have in Arena Cross are pretty cool, and it's actually been pretty good battles. I mean, at least the season opener that we've already seen. You had Josh Hill out there. You had Vince Friese on. I think it was on a Honda. Yeah, I don't know. It was, and so they call it was it Kicker Audio Clash? So basically they have an X Pro, which is the electric bikes class, and then they take the top two from that and they put them in this showdown basically between ICE, internal combustion engine bikes. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I think Josh Hill got third. He was a little far back, but obviously the dynamic of the race is interesting because the electric bikes can jump out front. I think they get a good start, and
yeah, and I mean
it's pretty good battles.
Arena Cross is much tighter than Supercross, which narrows the playing field between anything. I really think like you can go almost as fast on a 250 and probably even a 125 as you can at 450 in Arena Cross. Just it's so tight, and there's some jumps that obviously you need the power for in the which makes it easier, but overall like it's tight, tough racing that's banging. It's very much where Friese should have had his career, to be honest. Banging bars. He's and he's already freezed his teammate already.
Yeah. No, I know. I saw a clip. He like basically cross jumped and then he like jumped over a hay bale into a corner to like it's just like yeah, doing Arena Cross things, which he's always been doing. But yeah,
he's always been doing. So
yeah, how cool is it
I
that
think CFMoto is cool.
How cool is it that gasoline bikes and e-bikes are just, I think that's so neat. Usually you sometimes see them separated by class or category, and it's just like everyone's together the way it should be.
Yeah, I really like
it. You have the one class, where you do get to see them together. It's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a test in parity, and I think it's already kind of proved that it's pretty close. So I'm cool with that. And you see a lot of people that have ridden the Stark, like they love them. As soon as they get on them and they ride them, they're just like, forget my 450. I'm just going to ride this thing.
Seeing it more and more for sure this last year.
Yeah, Absolutely. I've never heard anyone say anything derogatory about that product. Not one person.
One person, anybody that's ridden it. I mean, there's plenty of naysayers that haven't thrown a leg over it, but once you throw a leg over it, you're like, it's almost instant conversion. If they could just do like demo rides at every motocross track in the country, they would sell so many more, just because people, when they ride and they go, oh, okay, it makes sense now. So I think this CFX concept, I hope it is a Stark competitor, and we see more of these bikes coming out in the future.
Yeah, and let's be honest, I mean, everything we've seen from CFMoto in terms of them introducing a concept or a prototype or teasing something, they're pretty quick to get that on the market, to finalize it, get it on the market. So I would imagine we can expect to see something by next year for sure.
Yep. And I hope that they're quick to come with the V4, the V.04 1000cc engine that they debuted at EICMA as well. So they also showed like a concept bike, which was basically like this like swoopy shell of a thing, like Tronish winged super bike thing, which obviously says they're going to put in a super bike obviously first. But we're talking about a 209 horsepower, 14,500 RPM, and an 84 foot-pounds of torque at 1250, 136 pound engine unit, 90-degree V4. It looks like it should be rowdy and really fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the big takeaway for me, obviously, yeah, you just look at what the relatively limited specs and information we have on that new V4. It looks like CFMoto's all in on it, and they're not cutting any corners. They're very serious. But I think my takeaway is just, again, seeing CFMoto playing in all of these different areas of motorcycling, from the adventure bike stuff that we rode last year, which I loved, Ibex, and then obviously seeing their dirt bike, and then seeing some of the sport bike stuff they've done, and now getting into the super bike space. They're just, again, on the gas. And I think they're, in terms of design and technology, they're right up there. It seems like they're taking it very serious.
How neat is it that we can talk about, V3 engines and electric superchargers and electric motorcycles to gasoline V4 prototype engines all in one outing. It's just unbelievable, the variety of, powertrain options that are being developed nowadays. It's just, just when you think, oh, gasoline's going away, CFMoto proves that it's betting that it's not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
What a time to be alive as a motorcyclist, right? You got so many options. And yeah, this really does prove that, like, and it goes back to my point that electric and ICE are two very different things and will probably stay that way. Companies are developing high horsepower ICE engines, and they're going to keep doing that. So it's not going to stop, and everyone's lamenting, we're not going to have gasoline powered machines that make rad noises. That's not going to go away for a very, very, very long time.
That's a good point. And you know a little bit. You've obviously heard some rumors about an actual production bike, right? So they have like the 1000 SR or something like that.
SRR.
Okay.
Anticipated 2026. There's not obviously a lot of details, but I think that's, with the master speed concept body thing that they showed, I think they're giving some hints to what is going to be like. They're going to have winglets, and it's going to be maybe they're going to go racing. Maybe they're going to go World Superbike or something. Who knows?
Sure seems that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure seems like that's the path they're on. And again, that's what I think is so cool about what CFMoto is doing right now, is they're just building a little bit of everything. They're playing in every space. And doing it quickly, right? They're not like, oh, we're going to be in this space for a while and then we'll move into this space. It's just like rapid fire of moving their product along and the business along.
Yeah, definitely being partnered up with BR Mobility Group has helped accelerate that. They've taken some engines from KTM and put them in some of their models, which gives them, like the new Ibis 800 and those types of things. But they're also learning from KTM, and they're learning that development and pushing the boundaries is what's going to put them ahead. And I think you really see that starting to happen. And, I think even seeing comments on the websites and stuff in people 5 years ago about CFMoto to now, oh, it was Chinese junk. You see that less and less and less, and you start seeing people go, that thing's cool. I like that. I'm interested in that. And I think they're breaking through. They're going to be the first to break through that, we'll say, stigma of being a Chinese manufacturer.
Yeah, good point. Adam, have you seen a lot on the road? I know over here in Irvine, I've seen a handful of the CFMoto sport bikes. The naked bike.
I haven't seen any CFMoto products on the street, but I went to a local power sports dealership the other day, and they had the CFMoto 450 sport bike motorcycle there. they had quite a number of them there, and I was checking them out with their Brembo brakes and their big LCD screen, and I just asked one of the sales guys, I'm like, how are these things moving? Because he had a bunch. He's like, oh man, he's like, these things are selling. He's like, this CFMoto 450 motorcycle, we sell 4-to-1 versus a Kawasaki Ninja, or 4-to-1 versus a Honda CBR. So it's just people are really liking just the price point, and that product comes with really good value as far as the features and benefits, like those Brembo brakes and that color TFT screen, where Kawasaki offers it, but it's double the price almost, 150% more. So
what did it
I
look
haven't seen
like?
any.
Like, how is it in terms of like just the presence on the showroom floor? Is it like a good looking motorcycle?
I don't know. I mean, appearance is so subjective to everyone. For me, I wasn't super pumped on the look of it. It kind of looked like generic to me. But in the world we live in, people aren't so brand agnostic anymore, brand loyal anymore. They're more brand agnostic, where they don't really care about, you know, what brand it is, as long as it has the features they want and the price is good and it looks reasonably well. People are generally into that. So I think it's
Yeah.
kind of fitting in that, culture of commerce. But personally, I don't really think they look cool at all.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point about the culture of commerce, and it's becoming more global, right? And I think that's one of the things too is in other markets these things are definitely selling like hotcakes, and where people are definitely can be more price conscious. That's where CF Motos is going to make their mark, is through price consciousness. And so while in the US that might not matter now, if we continue to see this trend of slowing sales and who knows what's going to happen with the economy, you may see CF Moto take a bigger leap forward with cheaper motorcycles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the MSRP of that 450, it's like $5,000 or $6,000. Like if I remember correctly, it's got a very, very favorable price point. Very favorable.
So last kind of concept bike, maybe not even a concept bike, we saw a wheel of it. What is it? The KLE, the Kawasaki KLE. That's a bike in a box.
Bike in a box.
Right?
It was the front wheel sticking out of a box. You could kind of see the engine. KLE, that's an old Kawasaki model. It was a dual sport-ish model before the KLX, basically. Had a 21-inch front wheel, had some long forks on it, and the engine had two head pipes that are very much shaped the same as those on the Eliminator 500 and bikes like that. So probably going to be a parallel twin adventure bike that's more aggressive than the current Versus 300 that they have now, which has kind of just been left in the dust in terms of the way that market has gone.
And just to explain it a little bit more, basically, it was a display at EICMA, right? It was a box, and it just had the fork and front wheel like kind of popping out of the box, right?
Like crashing out of the box, and then the rider's head was sticking out of the top of the box. So it was it was like it's being released, but not yet.
Yeah, so that's all we know about. We know basically a name, essentially, kind of, and. Yeah, we have an idea by looking at the fork and wheel, what they're trying to do, where they're going, but otherwise we know nothing about what this will be.
Yeah, not much else. So maybe we'll see it.
Would be.
Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
It would be cool if Kawasaki made a parallel twin powered power plant for an adventure bike. Like, they've been missing out for. I mean, the KLR is a great bike, no doubt, but kind of missing out on that true middleweight adventure touring segment.
Very much so, but I think if hopefully Kawasaki won't get rid of the KLR. Otherwise, you may have the faithful at the front doors with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah, no, we don't want that bike to go away. That bike's an awesome bike for the price.
Yeah. So here's one that I think Adam might find fun. It's not really a concept either. Puja's R1300 GS track bike. So they built this this track bike out of a new R1300 GS with like a front cowl and some winglets and a 17-inch front wheel. What do you think, Heed?
I think it looks like the Hans Muth Katana from, the 80s. So, and that was a cool bike back then, but we all know how Suzuki did it with its Katana remake in America. So, yeah, I don't think this thing will be so hot in America, but it looks cool.
It looks really fun, to be honest. I mean, for just a track day warrior, someone that wants to just like torque out of the corners everywhere, I think it looks really fun. So it's basically probably they're going to offer it as a kit. I don't think you're going to buy a bike whole, but and then again, we may never see anything more than this. It might just be a flexing of Peugeot's aero muscle, with all the windshields and stuff like that. But I would like to ride it.
We talked about it in the last episode, but it looks like KTM still one up them with their, super adventure, track riding press kit,
That is true. Yeah, they're just Super Adventure S, Evo, and S just on the track, just going for it. And leathers, you're just like, who goes adventure touring in leathers? But
no special kit required.
Yeah, no special kit required. True, you could just buy that one. So
yeah.
Anyway, so that kind of wraps up our concept talk. But there's one more question I want to ask, and that is, if you were a designer or a product manager or a manufacturer, concept bike, what would you build? Like, what would you bring to EICMA next year? Let's start with Adam.
Well, it's obvious that everyone's really into the small and mid-sized, naked bikes and small and mid-sized, just bikes. So, I mean, honestly, it's cool to see BMW Motorrad filling in the gap, between the 310 and the, 850 900 with its 450 concept. So I think it'd be cool just to see more. I know we already have too many models almost, but it'd be cool to see more of those little gaps being filled by, just these, small and mid displacement models, just, inserted in these different displacement categories. I mean, Kawasaki's kind of doing it, punching out the Ninja 300, 400, 500, to get a Ninja 550, but it's not a 600, but bigger than a 500. So I think, just more of those, just mid displacement, gap motorcycles. I think that's neat.
Yeah, that's very smart of you, actually. You should go work for a manufacturer. That was not what I was expecting to come out of Adam. I was expecting something with like extra rockets and a supercharger for the rockets. So
I mean, we all want that stuff, but we all want that stuff. But the reality is, no one's purchasing those vehicles.
No, very true. Right on. So Bradley, how about you?
I'm going to go the opposite direction and answer in a way that doesn't make sense because no one is buying these right now. But as a sport bike guy, I would love to see a proper middleweight sport bike. So a fully modern GSXR 600, 750. I get what's going on in the space right now with, again, these next gen, these softer, super sports that are more street oriented. But I have to imagine there's still people out there that want a proper middleweight sport bike, that's full bore, great chassis, an evolution, basically looking at their leader bike brethren and bringing it into that middleweight space. I mean, as an example, again, Adam and I were out at the track this week riding thousands, at an R1, a CBR 1000. And it's like, you got to really commit on those things, right? And it's like, you're signing up for something when you get on those. And it's just like, I love a middleweight, it's not quite as, as much work. Right. But at the same time, I don't want a street oriented thing that's got, maybe even different bar position or the engine is more tuned for street riding. I want proper super sport bike like I grew up on. So yeah, I still will argue that there's a need for those bikes. And I would think that there are enough track people out there that would buy them. Maybe that's just me being hopeful, but
I think we'll get back to those in 5 to 10 years because we're like, all these middleweight sport bikes right now seem like they're kind of priced down. They're more simple. They're more comfortable. But displacement creep happens. Tech creep happens. You start pumping up, and eventually we're gonna be back to like just super gnarly focused super sports. So I think that's something we could talk about in a future episode, is middleweight sport bikes, where they're going, what we like about them, all the things that are happening with them now. So I think we'll stop on that and we'll get to my bike. Right now, Dakar Rally's about to kick off in a couple months. So I got Rally on the brain, as I usually do anyways. But I think there's more interest in Rally than ever before. And I think that there needs to be a production Rally bike that's not a $50,000 KTM, but is also not a $10,000 Kove. Like a $20,000, we'll say like a KTM 500 EXCF with a tower and a bigger fuel tank that's like $18,000-ish, I think would be a killer. Street legal, all the suspension travel, all that stuff. And then people can do what they want with it, whether they can imagine that they're a rally racer, or they can make it a hardcore or dual sport / adventure. I don't know, but it seems like there's a space for that, and rally bikes just look cool. The shape of them is cool, and I think the showroom presence of them would just sell them just on that.
Yeah. Who do you think the customer is for that? Is that a dual sport rider owner who's looking for a little bit more performance in long haul, or is it like an adventure rider who's like, I like this sense of exploration, but I need something more hardcore?
Yes.
Fair. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, both.
Everyone.
Everyone.
All the above.
Actually, I just want it for me. All right. I want that bike for me. I don't care if they sell one and it's to me. Make the thing. So
that would be cool.
Fun to dream about these things. But yeah, again, I think the cool thing, I think the big takeaways here, obviously a lot of concept bikes at EICMA. Obviously it's where manufacturers can make the biggest splash and show where they're heading. But the big takeaway again was that in a lot of cases, it was like, yes, this is a concept, but we are coming to market with this. And in a lot of times they were saying, we aren't going to change the product very much. I think concept bikes can usually evolve quite a bit, but the stuff that we saw this year looked like final product almost,
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway from this, is that it's a sneak preview of 2026 models, and that's what we're going to be looking at next year. So I'm excited for it. I know everybody else is. So yeah, I think that's it for this one. I think we need to wrap it up. We're bumping up right on our time frame of an hour. So you guys listening, I know that you guys have your own thoughts on our ideas on concept bikes on MotoGP. Put your comments down below. Let us know what you're thinking. And if you have something you want us to talk about, put it in the comments as well. We'll check it out and we'll try to work it into an upcoming podcast. We appreciate your support. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.